Today's episode, we are talking about a critical piece of sustainable high performance, which is stress recovery. Now, this is one of my favorite topics to talk about, and I think it's often overlooked, especially for leaders out there. I love to say stress isn't the enemy, lack of recovery is. So today we are talking all things nervous system regulation strategies to be able to sustain high performance. Now, I am beyond honored to welcome our fabulous guest today, Joss Michael, who is a SOMA breathwork expert, dear friend, and has completely changed my life in the best way possible, which we'll talk about more later in this episode. But Joss, I'm going to keep your intro very short because I just want to dive into all of the knowledge and experience that you have so we can share it. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I'm excited to be here.
All right. I know you have a starting practice.
Yeah. So I always like to start being grounded because wherever you're listening from or whatever you're coming out of and doing, it's just nice to kind of reset and bring yourself down. So if you want to take one hand and place it on your chest,
Any hand?
usually your right hand. We
Okay.
want it over your heart. When you place your hand on your heart, you actually activate some hormones in the brain that make you feel like you're getting a hug. So that's really nice. And then you put your left hand on your belly. And when we breathe in, we're going to breathe in through our nose, and we want our belly to rise before our chest. So we want a nice deep diaphragmatic breath. And then when you exhale, you're going to blow out like you're blowing through a straw. So like nice, slow and smooth. So you can close your eyes if you feel comfortable, and let's go ahead and take that first breath in and out. In again and out. In and out.
That was nice. I feel like my shoulders just instantly relaxed
Yeah.
because I don't realize how often throughout the day I am tense and my shoulders are like in my ears. Doing this just like brings me back to the awareness of like how tight I just keep my body throughout the day, and probably most people.
Yeah. It's awesome with just 3 breaths. You can really like bring your system down. So I've gotten very in touch with my body through breath work. So when I feel any signs that things are going to escalate a little bit, I just kind of take that break and do the 3 breaths to just reset. It automatically activates your parasympathetic nervous system. And I think that's one of the amazing things about breath work is you've got instant benefits that happen when you use it. So we just felt that right now. And then long-term practice, you have those long-term benefits.
Yeah. And keying in on instant. I mean, how often can you do something in 10, 15 seconds and it can automatically trigger your parasympathetic nervous system? So just
Right.
remembering either going into a stressful situation or in a stressful situation, just you have access to such a quick and easy tool that you can instantly feel benefits from. So thank
Right.
you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's get into breath work. It is a buzzword right now. And with your experience and your knowledge, one of the many amazing things that I just very much respect about you is your ability to marry the science with what people sometimes think as like the spiritual side of breath work.
Right.
There is so much science to breath work. I'd love to educate the audience too of like the different styles and the different types and what is actually happening in their body so that they can take this episode and everyone's living in a high stress, high pressure environment. These are quick and easy tools.
Yeah, so I like to think of breath work as intentional breathing to meet a specific goal or a specific outcome. I also like to think of it as nervous system exercise. So we do our physical exercise, but we don't necessarily do our internal exercise. And so
Yeah.
breath work is doing different breathing techniques or breathing exercises to really build capacity, resilience, adaptability in your nervous system. And our breath is the most direct link to our nervous system. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. Obviously, we have to breathe to live. If we stop breathing, we stop living. And we take about 23,000 breaths a day.
Wow.
And those are all unconsciously. We're not thinking about it. So when we shift and we move into intentional breathing, we can really start to create these chemical changes within our bodies that really benefit and help us navigate society and our stresses and our daily routines a lot easier.
And I love that you mentioned internal work, because how often are we doing the external work? And I talk about this a lot with brain health is if we want big muscles, we can see that, right? So we go to the gym. If we have extra belly fat, we can go on a diet, but we're not ever doing the exercises that complement the inside of us,
Right.
like your brain and your nervous system, which, as we know, is critical when we're
Right.
talking about stress resilience and high performing.
Yeah. So I think our breath is a really great tool to bring awareness, right? So I like to say that our breath is a mirror
Mm,
of our internal state. And when you go into a doctor's office, counting how many breaths you're breathing per minute is part of the vital signs. And that is because it gives us a picture of
hmm.
what's going on internally. If you have elevated temperature, elevated breath, that's a sign of infection. So we know what's going on in your body. And because it's the one autonomic function that we can control, if we can get a picture of what's going on internally and we can control that direct link, we can also shift what's happening internally.
Yeah.
And so that is a really powerful realization when you find that. So,
Absolutely. So talk to us a little bit about, I know there's different styles, and
mhm.
then within the styles, there's different techniques. So will you kind of run us through the differences and also what is happening inside of our body and when to best use them?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a lot of different styles out there. Wim Hof, he is known as the Iceman. I think he
Hmm.
had a pretty integral part of bringing breath work to the mainstream here in Western civilization. It's a pretty common practice in the Eastern world. And then SOMA Breath, which is the one that I do. These are the two I'm going to talk about. There's several different styles out there. But again, when I mentioned that breath work is really intentionally breathing for a goal, I picked these two styles to talk about because Wim Hof is what we call a top down practice. So this is your cognitive nervous system. And so we're working from our mind into our body. And so the practices that he utilizes are going to help your body stay calm through the stress.
Mm,
Okay. Soma breath is an emotional nervous system practice where we work from the bottom down, meaning we're working from the bottom to the top. And so we are creating safety in our bodies. So we're directly working with our nervous system so that we can adapt in the stress. And so how we breathe really, really matters. And so,
yeah.
and what your goal is for breathing, right? So if your goal is, I want peak physical performance, and I want, to kind of expand what my capacity is in physical performance, Wim Hof, wonderful style for that. If you are somebody who deals with a lot of anxiety or trauma, things like that, Soma Breath is a little bit gentler. We're working from the bottom up. So we're dealing with those emotional states and helping you feel safe so that you can handle the stress. So when stress is happening, if you're noticing you're being reactive, well, if you're practicing Soma Breath, you'll notice that you're not as reactive, right? Because you're balancing your nervous system.
Yeah. I think it's really important that you are distinguishing between what are the person's outcomes and not trying to fit one style to everybody.
Right.
And I often see that online of like box breathing, for example. That's all I ever see talked
Yep.
about. The first question is never like, well, what are you navigating? What are you looking to accomplish?
Right.
And so I think it's really important for the audience listening to understand first, what are you trying to achieve? Are you feeling really anxious and you're needing a reset to just calm down in a really stressful situation? Or are you about to go into a stressful situation and you want to get elevated for peak performance?
Right.
So let's kind of dive into the differences in each of them and kind of what is happening inside of our body for them.
Yeah. So the box breathing is probably the most recognized breathing technique out there.
Yeah.
And having an understanding of how box breathing works is extremely important. So box breathing would fall into that cognitive, that top to bottom. So basically, you are bringing cognitive focus in. You're counting, you're holding your breath, you're counting, you're holding your breath. So these are techniques. A box breathing technique would be used for test anxiety. If you're going out on stage and about
Yeah.
to do some public speaking. So you're really preparing your nervous system to stay calm through the stress. So box breathing wouldn't be my go-to if you're having elevated emotions or a panic attack. For that, I would go to extended exhales, which is something that we use in Soma Breath, which is your emotional, your bottom up. And an extended exhale is going to activate your parasympathetic nervous system. There's no breath hold in it. So when we hold our breath, that could induce more panic. So you could have a little bit of backfire if you're using box breathing during a situation where you need to kind of down regulate. So a down regulating breath that is much more useful is like the extended exhales.
Yeah. So let's clarify box breathing. Does that mean you're breathing in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. Is that
Correct.
box breathing?
Yep.
Okay. And then extended exhales. Will you kind of give us the laydown of what that looks like?
Yeah, so you'd breathe in for a certain number and you'd double the exhale. So it's
Okay.
whatever your comfort level is. I generally ask people to do 4-8, but you may not be able to do that. If you're used to overbreathing, a 2-4 might feel better, or somewhere in between, a 3-6. So you breathe in for a certain amount of time and then you just double or extend your exhale. And it doesn't always have to be double. It could be, in for 2, out for 6, in for 4, out for 6. You just
Yeah.
want to extend the exhale to just really help slow that breath down.
Yeah. And I love that you simplify, right? Like breathe out longer than you're breathing in,
Right.
which is really helpful for parents out there who are wanting to teach their children instead of having like the counting system, which can sometimes confuse them. I work with my 2 kids on like, all right, breathe in and then just make sure you're breathing out a lot longer. And that's enough for them to understand. And then one helpful thing, I tried to like make up words for parents to help them count with their kids. And that was in for chicken nuggets, out for pepperoni pizza, which I think was like 4-6, which was
Yeah.
seemed manageable for the children.
Yeah.
So just simplifying. And also want to clarify to the audience, we are breathing in through our nose and out through our mouth. Is that true for all of the techniques that you're talking about right now?
Every technique has a little bit of different format to it, but 4 extended exhales in through your nose and out through your mouth is the best. And I love hearing when your kids are doing breath work. It
Yeah.
tickles me.
And it has been so instrumental in my parenting. Every time it happens, I like text you. I'm like, oh my God, Jess, like, here's what happened. But even just like for the parents out there, teaching your children that when you are triggered, which happens all the time, mid meltdown, pre meltdown, whatever it is. And one quick example, we were playing in the playroom. Something happened between my 3 and 6-year-old of like a toy was grabbed. My daughter, who was 6 at the time, just like gets an outburst, right? And then she immediately runs out the room, runs into her room. It's actually happened 2 times. I never chase her because I need her to process.
Right.
And then I went to her room and I could hear her doing her breathwork Tony. And then she came back in the room and was fully regulated and looked at my son and was like, Carter, can you please share that toy with me? And I was like, oh, proud mom. And I was like, immediately like, Joss, guess what just happened? And it was just like such a proud moment. But seeing the immediate, again, effects that it can have, this is not just for adults, but circling back. Okay, so we have extended exhales, which are better for you're in a stressful situation, you're feeling like you really need to calm.
Right.
I leverage this all the time. When I can feel myself like getting mad, I'm a parent of 2 kids. Like it happens. Like bedtime, see red, right? And I will be like, you are frustrating me. Like I'm going to step outside and I'm going to calm down and do my breath work. And that's what I go to, right? Is
Yeah.
like the extended exhales. My shoulders just drop. My whole body just relaxes. And to nerd out on the brain, we talk about the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system, sympathetic being fight or flight. And in doing the breath work, it will trigger your parasympathetic nervous system. So when fear happens, our amygdala gets triggered. That's threat detection. In teaching breath work to children, this is our barking dog. We need our amygdala. It's very important. But our prefrontal cortex, which is decision making,
Right.
rational thinking, and emotional control, gets quieted because the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex cannot talk at the same time. So I love leveraging extended exhales because what is it doing? It's calming the amygdala and it's triggering the prefrontal cortex, allowing children and adults to have more rational thinking. You
Right.
you
Absolutely.
cannot have a rational discussion with a toddler or adult that is like in that state. So I love that it actually completely triggers those pieces and parts of your brain. Then you can debrief and talk about things after when you can
Right.
approach it from that standpoint.
Yeah, and when we're talking about children and adults too, and they're in those emotions, right? I mean, it's I have a goal and it is to get that toy, so I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get that toy.
Yeah.
But once you take those 3 breaths like we just did, all of a sudden the goal changes that I don't need that toy right now. The goal is still I want that toy. How can I get it? And so that's what she did was like, okay, I need to express to him that I want that toy and I need to ask him for it. Where if she didn't take that pause, she would have grabbed
Whew.
it, right? Like,
Yeah. Would have ended
and
a lot
so
different. Yeah.
right. And we don't take those pauses
Yeah.
throughout our day. We just fit and go, go, go and see how much more we can fit in. And we're very much an output focused society. And we really need to start working on the internal. Like, I just had a conversation with my girlfriend the other day, and we were talking about power and what power looks like to people. And years ago, I actually created a curriculum for children called Power Peacefully,
Mm.
because we see Superman can fly. Iron Man is super strong. And so everything that we see and is fed to us and to our children of what power is, it's an external thing.
Interesting.
And so Power Peacefully shifted that thought process that power comes from within, right? So when you are able to respond, when you are able to communicate what you need, when you're able to practice agency, that's where the true power comes in. Because we can't let all these external things impact us. And a lot of things, they're temporary. It's a temporary issue. Tomorrow, that's not going to matter. In 5 minutes, it might not matter. So, like, let's just take that pause. Let's go inside. And the easiest way to do that is with the breath, is like the breath brings you to right here, right now.
Yeah.
Not worried about what's going to happen or what has happened, but what's happening right now.
And I love that you mentioned it's triggering the prefrontal cortex, which is allowing you to approach it in a problem-solving way.
Right.
So then you're able to calm down and say, okay, how else can I get to this end result? Do I need
Right.
to better communicate? Do I need to approach this from a completely different angle? Now, I'm curious, talking about power, and I love that you brought that up because I don't think we think about this. I mean, I have kids, right? Every single thing that's like success and like the hero is always external. What is the role in power from that angle and safety? Because that's something we mentioned earlier, is something that SOMA Breathwork really sets the foundation of making you first feel safe,
Right.
so that you can kind of enter either different states or have different outcomes.
Right.
So what is the role in power and safety?
So I think when we can bring safety into our person, into our body, we then trust that we can handle whatever's coming our way. And when we feel like we can handle things, that's where the power comes. So we're not moving from a sense of fear. We're moving from, I'm safe. I trust my decisions. I trust my intuition. I trust that I can handle this. I trust that if this doesn't go my way, I can handle that as well. Right? So I think safety is the foundation for power coming from within.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that power ever is truly external.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't make you feel a certain way. I can maybe say something that triggers something, but whatever is happening, that's something internal.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you define power?
I really don't even like the word power,
Yeah.
quite
I think
honestly.
it has this
but
like
yeah,
dominant
it does.
connotation to it sometimes.
It does.
Yeah.
I prefer agency. So to me, what power is having agency. Power doesn't sit well with me.
I've had the pleasure of being a part of multiple of your breathwork sessions. And one of the things I really think sets you apart and spoils me is you have this innate ability to create a safe space. So as soon as you walk in, you've been very intentional in curating not only a space, but an experience that feels very safe. Because I've taken breathwork courses that weren't you, and I was like, I need Joss.
Yeah.
It's just different because during breathwork, I have releases. I am dealing with things that I didn't even know were in there in like a really safe way. You kind of just guide your clients through a way that they can receive what they need to, instead of some breathwork programs like walk you through and like guide you of like, here's what you should be feeling in this moment. And you create the space for them to receive what they're needing. Can you like reframe that in a way that makes sense?
So there's a quote that says, I found the world woefully limited in safe spaces. So I decided to become one. And so to me, a safe space is really a place that you can present yourself as you are. You come as you are. You're accepted as you are. No judgment, no criticism. You just be. And what a wonderful gift to just allow people to just be, not having to perform, not having to, meet any kind of agenda or expectations. It's just come as you are, just be. And the big shift in my work came when I realized that I was following the formula, because that's how you're taught to teach breathwork. And I said, let me try something different. And let's make the shift where I'm not guiding you. I don't know what your intention is when you came. If you share it with me, wonderful, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
You have agency over how you're going to experience that. And so I learned to pass that on in my breath work. So you're the one leading your journey. And so we are all having a collective journey. And generally that's around love and kindness, because I feel like that's what's going to ripple out and heal the world. But you have your individual journey as well. And I'm there to support that. in any way. When you can go into a space and feel vulnerable and just know that you can be held, and I call it holding space, it's just a really great gift. And it makes me feel good to be able to
Yeah.
give that to people because I haven't always had those safe spaces in my life. And we really, really need that, especially in like the current climate. We're in that, go, 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 do more, more, more. And everybody's kind of has an expectation from us. I mean, even as a business owner, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't post much on social media and I get a lot of pressure with people who are mentoring me, like, you got to post more on social media. And so there's all these expectations as a business owner. Well, if you want visibility, you have to do this. And so we're just trying to hit all these markers. And there's very few experiences throughout our daily and weekly and monthly routines that allow us to just be.
Yeah.
So that to me is just absolutely needed.
How wonderful is that? Because we are in such a performative society that there aren't many spaces that I know of. And I think that's why it's so powerful. And now I can see more and more, popping up in different modalities,
Right.
but it's so needed. I would argue it allows people to have more of a transformation. When you are in that space, no barriers, and I guide my own journey and I receive what I need. I just think it's just so beautiful. So I just wanted to shout that out that you do differently.
And it's funny that the biggest challenge in my experiences or in my events is getting people to a point where they don't have to worry, am I doing it right? I hear that so
Mm,
much. Well, I wasn't sure if I was breathing the right way or if I was with the counting. I was like, don't worry about that. And they get there eventually. And that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing because I can see it because I'm watching you guys. So I can see in your face when you're concentrating on doing it right. And then I see the moment where you release and you just let go. And so you'll hear me say a lot, like, just lean into it. And when I'm saying lean into it, it's because I'm seeing somebody who's really trying to make sure they're doing this correctly. And it's like, no, just let your breath guide you and just surrender. And that's very hard for us to do.
yeah.
Surrendering is scary. We want to have control of everything. And so some people will describe breath work as controlled breathing. I
Mm,
describe it as intentional because really to get the full effect of breath work, you have to completely surrender.
yeah.
And that's a scary thing. And that's why we need to have those safe spaces because if you're going to surrender and that feels scary to you, like, I need to make sure that you feel safe in your body and you also feel safe with me.
Yeah. And I'm loving this because what I'm hearing is a lot of shifting from power to agency and shifting from control to intention. And in a world where we are obsessed with control, that we're performative, right? We have a lot of pressure and we obsess about everything that's out of our control, which is usually the things that trigger us, and just taking it back and just being really, really intentional. It's a really needed shift and just so important.
And I always say small shifts create meaningful change.
It's true because we are too busy to be
Yeah.
taking like big life overhauls or needing drastic changes. And that's what this is so powerful. It's not a huge uplift. It's how many minutes does it take per day to start seeing results?
So studies show 5 minutes. As little as 5 minutes in 30 days, there were measurable changes and results for better
That's
mood.
wild.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's incredible. All right. So let's circle back to the different types of breath work and what is happening physiologically in our body and the benefits.
So what happens in breath work is that you're doing CO2 regulation. We're taught like oxygen is good, carbon dioxide's bad, but we don't really hear about the role of carbon dioxide in our body. So we actually, with intermittent hypoxic training and SOMA breath, is we temporarily lower the oxygen intake and we increase the carbon dioxide load.
Now, let me pause you. What is intermittent hypoxic training? Is that the breath holds?
Those are the breath holds.
Okay. And what does that mean for somebody who's never tried breath work before?
So it's basically like high altitude training. So
Okay.
the way we kind of found it was, I think it was 1969. There was an Olympics in Mexico and it was at a high elevation. And so there was a huge concern that those athletes may not perform as well. And so they started doing this high elevation training, which is what we call intermittent hypoxic training. So we can mimic high elevation by doing the breath holds. And what happened that year was not what they expected. Their track and field like blew out of the water, like all of
Wow.
their numbers and their performance. So they actually ended up performing a lot better. So intermittent hypoxic training is great for physical performance and increasing performance, but it's also great for healing. So our bodies are like these miraculous beings, right? That if you cut your finger, you don't have to do anything. Like your body knows that that finger needs to be healed. So what's happening with intermittent hypoxic training is what we call the Bohr effect. And so we're temporarily increasing carbon dioxide, which is releasing more oxygen molecules from our hemoglobin. The oxygen already knows where it needs to go. If you have a cut on your finger, that's where it's going to go, and it's going to heal a lot faster. So when
Ooh,
you think about chronic disease, and I think what we see a lot here in the Western world is a lot of autoimmune diseases, and like
guilty.
70 to 80% of autoimmune diseases are caused by chronic inflammation. And so breath work is a huge help in that because it actually like turns off those signals for that inflammation, so it can help you manage those symptoms better. But we use oxygen more efficiently when we incorporate intermittent hypoxic training. So that's what we're doing is we're increasing our CO2 tolerance. When we increase our CO2 tolerance, we're then increasing our oxygen efficiency. So it's not about how much oxygen we get into our body, but how we use it. And then the pH balance. So sometimes when you're in the breath work, your hands, you get like these crab hands,
Yeah.
like things start to like feel weird. Well, we're increasing the pH balance in our body. This just kind of puts us into like a temporary respiratory alkalosis, and it helps balance like the acidity in our bodies and things like that. So there's a
So if
lot
I got
of
a leg cramp, is that from the pH balance?
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and usually when you slow down the breath or you go into a breath hold, it'll pass.
Now, with the intermittent hypoxic training, are there any disclaimers? Because I know when we've held events before, there's just
Yes.
some things to call out
Yeah,
to be
there's a lot
careful.
of contraindications for it. So when we go into a class, we discuss those. And basically, if you have any kind of COPD 2 or 3, anywhere that it's probably not beneficial to reduce the oxygen, we ask you not to do it. If you're pregnant, we don't want you reducing your oxygen intake because you're taking care of another
Sure.
human being inside of your body. Or if you have organ failure, we don't want to be reducing oxygen. So there are some contraindications, but we use rhythmic breathing, and that's safe for everybody.
Perfect. So I just want to make sure we call that out.
Yep. And then nitric oxide production comes from nasal breathing. So some breath work you'll see, like in conscious connective breathing, you're breathing in and out of your mouth. We breathe in through our nose and out through our mouth because that nasal breathing is what creates that nitric oxide production. So we're really working with a lot of chemicals and a lot of gas exchange with the breath work. I mean, it's a respiratory system. So we don't think about that because we don't think about our breathing, but
Yeah.
that's what's happening. And then in a nervous system level, you're increasing vagal tone,
Mm.
right? So that vagus nerve, and you are reducing cortisol.
And the vagus nerve is very connected to calming your
Yes.
nervous system down. So
Yep.
being able to be in alignment with your vagus nerve is huge.
Right. Yep. And then you're reducing the adrenaline and the noradrenaline. And then the other thing that we're doing with the intermittent hypoxic training is we're actually creating these energy locks where we're moving cerebral spinal fluid up. And so as that cerebral spinal fluid moves up and it gets to what we call your third eye, it releases what we call dose. So dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphin. So a lot of times you'll get this really feel good feeling.
Yeah.
Some people describe it as feeling high. And I think Soma Breath jokes around about getting high on your own supply, or maybe it's Wim Hof. Maybe they both do now. But we talk about creating more serotonin with our gut health,
Oh, yeah.
but we don't talk about releasing it. And so that's another thing that's happening with breath work. So it's very physiological. That's why I call it exercise for your
Yeah.
internal nervous system.
And it's science backed. You know, if
Yes.
like, people will be like, oh, it's so woo woo. And it's like, no, it's actually,
Right.
there's a lot of research around monitoring. And now maybe episode 2 will do the tracking. So you
Yep.
can see in real time with the monitors on of like how quickly you can
Yeah.
experience physiological changes. Now, the benefits you've mentioned thus far, is this for all types of breath work, or is this specific to the intermittent hypoxic training?
No, it's all types of breath work.
Perfect.
It's just some work from the top down and some work from the bottom up, and there's just different outcomes. So
Yeah.
it's whatever protocol works best for you to get you to where that outcome is. And the other thing that breath work does across the board, no matter what style you're doing, is it increases your HRV. And so when we go to get life insurance, they're checking our vital signs and they're looking at our HRV because our HRV gives us a very good picture of how long we're going to live.
Mm,
Isn't that interesting?
very.
So the lower your HRV, the less adaptability your body has internally to stress. And so we're talking about stress recovery is very important. So we have an episode we have our natural reaction to it in our body, but we're not recovering. We're staying in that fight or flight instead of doing the recovery. So all breath work will increase your HRV. So it really does increase longevity as well. So it's just incredible. I could go on for days and days of all the benefits. And depending on what you're looking for, what you're dealing with, I could come up with a protocol that's perfect for you. If it's, I have high blood pressure, I'm 35, I don't want to be on medication, we can work on that. With breath work, we can start to lower, the blood pressure and lower your heart rates and things like that.
Yeah. All right. So having been a chronic autoimmune diseaser over here, not just once, but twice, a lot of this, as you mentioned, comes from inflammation. So is there a role that breath work plays in being anti-inflammatory?
Yes. So what happens is when we are in fight or flight, that's pro-inflammatory, right? So your cytokine signaling is active. When we can move your body out of that stress and we can move you into the parasympathetic, then we can stop that signaling. And so what it does is it strengthens your immune system so it doesn't feel like it needs to be on attack.
Because basically, correct me if I'm wrong, but being in an in an inflamed state, your body is just like constantly attacking itself.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Well, that's what's happening in autoimmune diseases, right? Your body's getting confused and it's your immune system is overacting and it's attacking.
Yeah.
Because it's seeing something as foreign. And a lot of that comes from chronic stress. We see a lot of autoimmune diseases that happen from chronic stress or chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation happens from being in chronic stress.
Yeah, it's like this cyclical cycle. I mean, that's what happened to me, not taking care of myself, but also realizing that what I was doing weren't the right things. So back in the day, I was doing the self-care. And I got really frustrated when I hit burnout for the second time because I was like, I'm doing the massages, I'm doing the manicures, I'm doing the like bubble baths and the gratitude journal. I'm trying to have a positive attitude. It's not working. And what I realized is felt like I saw this image of a bucket with like holes just draining out. And everything that I was pouring back into it, because I knew to fill my cup, right, weren't the things that were plugging the holes, which is stress recovery, which is nervous system regulation.
Right.
I wish I had met you like back in my past, could have saved a couple health journeys. For the audience, I'd love to kind of just go through, I'll shout out some outcomes, and then you tell us which breathwork style you would recommend.
Okay.
So if we're looking to be more focused and like peak performance, what do you recommend?
Alternate nostril breathing. So when you do the alternate nostril breathing, you're activating both sides of the brain hemispheres. So that really helps increase focus and attention.
Awesome. What is alternate nostril breathing?
So basically you plug one nose.
Okay. Doesn't matter what side?
Nope.
Okay.
Breathe in. We plug the other nose and breathe out of the other nostril. Now we breathe in from this nostril, plug, and breathe out of the other nostril.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And what I'm not paying attention to is counting, which is that is less distracting. So there are like rules around nostril breathing?
I don't think there's really any rules around breath work. I mean, if you put too many rules on things, it kind of loses its magic. So generally, coherent breathing is the number of breaths you want to do, right?
Okay.
So HeartMath Institute has found out that we want to breathe in for 5 and out for 5. That's pure coherent breathing. That brings us down to 6 breaths per minute, and that's the healthiest type of breathing. And when you start practicing breath work, you notice that you're doing equal in and out. And so there is no counting that needs to go through it. But I tend to go 4-5 in and 4-5 out if I was to count for somebody, because that's what coherent breathing is. So that puts all of your system into sync.
Okay. So if I'm need to get laser focused, if I have like deep work task that I'm doing alternate nostril breathing, for how long do you recommend?
I do everything in like 3 to 5 minute increments.
Perfect. That's very doable. So before big meetings, things like that. Does box breathing also help with focus and performance?
Yep. Box breathing is also one of those cognitive focused breathing.
Yep.
So.
Navy SEALs use it, right?
Yep.
So it's like to prep you, or maybe you're giving a big speech or you're going into like a stressful client meeting, things like that. That would be a good prepping.
If you think about it, so Navy SEALs a tactical team. So anything that you're going in that you feel like you're going in.
Yeah. You need a prep.
Team. That's what you would
want
to
like
do.
Kids' bedtime? No, I'm just kidding.
Kids' bedtime would be more your down regulation. That would be your extended.
Oh, yeah, you're true. But I do need to prep for that.
Prepping yourself for that. Yeah, maybe.
Yes. All right, Kyle, we got this. Oh my gosh. Okay, next one would be nervous system regulation, what do you recommend?
So, nervous system regulation, I mean, it would be a daily practice of breath work. And again, my go to would be coherent breathing, but mostly diaphragmatic breathing.
Okay.
So, really learning to move out of the chest and into the diaphragm. And there's a scientific reason for it.
Yeah.
So, when we keep the breath in the chest, we're bringing the air into our upper lobes. But the best gas exchange happens in the lower lobes.
Hmm.
So, when we're able to do that diaphragmatic breathing, we're opening up our rib cage and we're allowing that air to come down to the lower lobes and have that best gas exchange.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, and then if you are somebody who has high stress environments or a lot of anxiety, incorporate those extended exhales because you really have to get yourself back into the recovery. So, our parasympathetic is our rest and digest. If you just stay in that low grade fight or flight and you can never move yourself into that parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest, you're going to have trouble with sleeping. You're going to have insomnia. You're going to have all kinds of symptoms that happen because we're not getting into that recovery state.
Yeah, which also, because I'll nerd out on sleep for days, has detrimental effects. So when you're sleeping in deep sleep, the glymphatic system kicks in, which we talked about cerebrospinal fluid.
Right.
This is wild. It is said to be like a squirt bottle in your brain while you are sleeping, and it is washing out all of the toxins, but only happens when you are in deep levels of sleep.
Right.
Also, creating new neural connections, consolidating memories. Like these are super important. So being in these chronic stress states, we don't always talk about, well, what are the repercussions? What are the snowball effects of living in this? And sleep is hugely tied to that. Also making sure that you're setting a good foundation by doing a breathwork practice 5 minutes a day, simple as that, can have lasting effects because it can help you sleep better and all these other impacts.
I think, what tends to happen when you can bring a practice in, and 5 minutes is the minimum where we see measurable change, right? So imagine if you up that to 15 or 20 minutes or 30 minutes. When you really get into the practice, if that's what feels aligned with you, you start looking forward to that time.
Mm-hmm.
Then it doesn't become something I have to do. It's something I get to do.
Yeah.
As soon as this meeting's done, I can jump on and do my breath work. And so I always look forward to it. Even if I don't have a stressful day, I just look forward to it.
Because it's you time. And how often do we carve out time for us to have no devices? This isn't going for a walk and scrolling social media. This is dedicated time where maybe your eyes are closed and you have no visual inputs and you are just with your thoughts.
Right.
You are bored. We do not enough spend time in these states where we are just quiet, because the beautiful thing is that's when you hear. That's when you actually problem solve. That's when you can have these revelations, is when you quiet your body and your mind into a state where you can actually listen.
Right.
I mean, how often are we doing that? So I love carving that out. Now, also what I'm hearing is start with 5 minutes a day. But I took a program that started us with 5 minutes a day. Then we moved to, was it 20, and then 46, and then an hour. But also finding what works for you. Some days I only had 5 minutes. Some days I only had 20 when I had and blocked off on my calendar, but I started to look forward to it.
And I do think it's important to do a progression, because it's a bit of sensory deprivation depending on how you do it. I mean, we use music, so we also use that brain entrainment music, which uses alpha, beta, theta waves to help you get into meditation. Because we recognize, like, when we live in such an overstimulated state, it is very hard to be in quiet. But if you can do it in quiet, if you can do it in dark, and you can settle into that, it is very, very uncomfortable in the beginning. Some people can only do 5 minutes. Some people can only do 2. Most people can only do 2. Most people, when I send them that 5-minute track, at 2 minutes, they're like checking their phone and how long have I been doing this? And it's like the longest 5 minutes of your life, because you're not doing anything. You're just being. And that's such an uncomfortable state for so many people right now.
Because it's unfamiliar, because we're not doing it enough and we're so overstimulated and seeking dopamine constantly that when it's uncomfortable, we fall back to what we know, which is grabbing the phone, checking, distracting ourselves. So making that a habit is so important.
And also, like, getting out of your head. If you can only do 2 minutes, then just do 2 minutes. Next day, see if you get to 2.5 minutes. It's okay. Like, you're starting to create a new habit for yourself. And you need to meet yourself where you are,
Yeah.
right? I don't have any expectations from you. Just hit play.
Yeah.
If you want to, if it works for you today. If you show up 60 to 70% of the time, you're in a good place. And it's just kind of like, how do I present it where there's no expectations?
Yeah.
Like, you just work with what you can and be okay with that. If you are doing 2 minutes a day and that's all you can do, you're doing something,
Yeah.
right? Eventually, you'll get up to 5 minutes a day. You're training yourself to take some time to disconnect.
I find this a lot is it's like an all or nothing perspective
Right.
of like, even for the gym, like, oh, well, if I can't go for a whole hour, I may as well not go. And it's like,
Right.
well, no, you could still go for 15 minutes and like
Right.
get some results in that 15
Right.
minutes. Same with like dieting, literally anything. You get 2 weeks in, you're like, ugh, whatever, I can't do this. I can't keep up with
Yeah.
it. I can't make it sustainable. So I love your approach that like, take what you need. If you can only do 2 minutes and you get uncomfortable, like, okay, that was great. You recognize that. Let's just try for 2.5
Right.
next time. And it's habits 101. It's just building the repetition of making time and just prioritizing it. Now, one thing I wanted to circle back to that you mentioned earlier was taking the deep breath because this is something I did wrong. And I know this because I was burnt out, had lost my voice for 8 months, had to go to a voice coach. And in our first meeting, we sit down and she's like, all right, let's take a deep breath. And I go, and for those of you who can't see me, my shoulders went up to my ears and they dropped back down. And she was like, oh, no, 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 no. She was like, that's not how you breathe. Like, she was so sweet, but she was like, no, like we want to breathe through our belly. And I was like, breathe for your belly? What are you talking about? I've never
Right.
even heard that before. And then comes out that for 34 years, I was breathing incorrectly. Now, I don't want to assume it was the full 34 years, but in talking to you, we came out with maybe it was what's called dysfunctional breathing. Now, I had previously been living in 10 years of chronic stress and fight or flight, not regulating my nervous system because I didn't know how. So, talk to us a little bit about what chronic stress does to dysregulated breathing. And then how do we shift that?
So the habit would be just check in with your breath. Some of us aren't aware of what our dysfunctional breathing is. And we have three major ones that we see. One is mouth breathing,
Mm.
right? And mouth breathing is actually stress adaptive breathing. So when you are in an emergency or if you're running or if your nose is stuffed and you can't breathe through your nose, you move to breathing through your mouth to bring in more air. If your nose is stuffed and you can't breathe through your nose, you move to your mouth. How else are you going to get air in? So that's what we call stress adaptive breathing. And so when stress adaptive breathing becomes habitual, that's when we start seeing dysfunctional breathing. And so the world that we live in kind of causes this, right?
Yeah.
So if you are in this state of urgency and everything feels like an emergency, you can move to that mouth breathing and it can become a habit. And so a little shift that you can do if mouth breathing is an issue for you and you're aware of it is just touch your tongue to the roof of your mouth. Try to breathe through your mouth with your tongue touching the top. Not very comfortable,
No.
right? So if you get into that little habit of just resting your tongue at the roof of your mouth, which feels very comfortable, it will activate nasal breathing. And
Yep.
if you can't breathe through your nose, then you may have to breathe through your mouth and understand that that's okay if it's a stress adaptive, natural shift that we're doing. It's just when those become habitual. The other thing that happens is when we're stressed, we start to do shallow breathing.
Mm.
And shallow breathing is considered chest breathing. So when you are doing the deep breath into the chest, that's very, very common. And so when that becomes habitual, that becomes a dysfunction. The other thing is rapid breathing. As a society, we overbreathe, and we are overbreathing when we feel that fight or flight. So that's how we get to dysfunctional breathing. And it's just checking in with your breath and noticing and not changing anything, just stopping and noticing. Where's the breath coming in from? Where is it landing in my body? When it comes out, is it coming out of my nose or out of my mouth? How am I breathing? Just checking in with that and being aware is step one. And here's another way how today's society kind of makes us move into this like stress adaptive breathing that becomes habitual. Tech neck.
Oh, tell
So
me more because I
if your
probably have that.
head
Yep.
if your head is forward, your mouth naturally opens.
Oh, you're right. As soon as you drop your chin, your mouth kind of falls open.
And how many people are like this all day long?
Oh, so many.
So posture, correcting your
Yeah.
posture. If you correct your posture and you bring your head back, your mouth will naturally close.
Well, I bet too, when you put your shoulders back, you're probably expanding your like lung
Right.
capacity too.
Right.
Wow, that's interesting. Now, one thing that's kind of related but kind of not is One tip for productivity is actually to put your monitor higher, because when your eyes are looking upwards, you can actually be more alert. So if you're looking up, maybe you're more less likely to have your mouth drop open.
Yeah.
Oh, that's super interesting.
I can geek out on this
Yeah,
stuff
no, I love
forever.
it. Geek,
So,
geek
but
away.
so like if you realize you're breathing in your chest, and you just realize that by just putting your hand on your
Yeah,
chest.
how do you know? So, like, to the listener who doesn't know if they're breathing incorrectly, because I didn't. I didn't until someone showed me and told me I was doing it wrong, which I've got to imagine a lot of people out there are doing dysfunctional stress-induced breathing. So, step one, become aware. And this is great because you can habit stack. So, find a habit you're already doing, a healthy one, and then think, okay, maybe this is time to check in with my breath. A lot of us drink coffee. We have a coffee routine. So, maybe when you pour your coffee, you just check in. Number one, awareness. And then now what are we doing?
First, observe. So if you're breathing in through your nose, passing, you're not a mouth breather. The next thing is shallow breathing. So just put your hand on your chest.
Okay.
And as you're breathing in, is your chest going up a lot? And if it is, okay, then you just deepen the breath and put it into the abdomen. If you have trouble figuring out how to do that, you do the body connection. So
Okay.
you put your hands on your hips.
Hands on our hips. Okay.
All right. And then your goal is to have that breath meet your hands. See how it brings it down?
Yeah.
It's so amazing. I had to use my breath work when I was doing PT for vestibular neuritis.
Yes.
And my physical therapist is like, it's some weird disconnection going on here. Like your trunk or your bottom is completely firm and your trunk is like those little inflatable.
Carter loves those inflatable wobbly ones.
So I was
Yeah.
kind of doing that, and she's like, engage your core. It was like my brain was really struggling because I was just trying to keep my balance.
Yeah.
And so the only way I could do it was to take a deep diaphragmic breath, because I knew I could bring my breath into my diaphragm, and then I could engage my core.
Yeah.
And immediately when I started focusing on my breath, everything connected. It was absolutely amazing. So there is that brain body connection. So sometimes just touching where you want the breath to go helps. And then, if you notice that you're breathing quickly, you just slow it down. The easiest way to slow down your breath and not have to use a lot of brain power, because that's what we don't want to have to do more, right?
You mean overcomplicate it?
Is just breathe in as much as you can until you can't breathe in anymore, and blow out as much as you can until you can't blow out anymore. And you're naturally slowing down the breath. And that's not how you're going to continue to breathe all day, but you're triggering your brain to slow down the breath.
Something we all need to do, just period, is just slow down sometimes.
That is my advice to, I have adult children, like I said, is just slow down.
Yeah.
I don't say anything else. If you just slow down in everything you do, life is going to be easier.
Yeah.
Slow down your driving. You're probably not going to get into an accident or get a ticket, right?
Yeah.
Slow down your breathing, slow down your thinking, slow down your responses. Nothing needs to be handled right here and now.
Yeah, so dive more into the responses, because I think this is important.
Yeah, so when you are living in chronic stress and you're in that low grade fight or flight, your foundation becomes a sense of urgency. When that's our foundation, a sense of urgency, there is no way to prioritize anything. Everything feels urgent. And that's when we're multitasking, we're trying to handle everything. So we want to get your foundation to where you're living in that parasympathetic and you don't feel a state of urgency for everything. If an email comes in right now, I don't need to look at it right now. We're in the process of something. When we're done, when I have time, I can look at it. And that email doesn't need a response immediately when I see it.
Yep.
And we want to respond immediately because we're afraid that we're going to forget.
Yeah.
Right.
We're offloading it. Yeah.
Right. And so I put it on a to-do. I still handwrite my to-dos, email this person back. And when I get to it, I get to it. And so I'm very much a proponent of monotasking, just because I realized that I was losing a lot of time when I was multitasking. And I just do things a lot slower. And it probably drives people crazy who are around me, but it's also training them as well. One of the things I want to put into effect is an auto response that says, these are my business hours. So if you are contacting me outside of my business hours, you know to expect a response in the business hours. And then your nervous system can calm down a little bit, because a response is going to come, just not now.
Yeah. It almost helps the other person too. It's not even, it's helping both of you at the same time.
Well, I had to do it with my kids. Like my kids, everything seems like a sense of urgency to them. And I was like, do not call me unless it is an emergency during these hours.
Yep.
And I put my do not disturb on. And my kids had to learn that they have to wait for me to get back to them. It's been hard for them. Very, very hard for
Well, I
them.
think it's hard for a lot of parents too, because
Yeah.
they take on this like, oh, I have to respond immediately to
Right.
their kids. I mean, that's really anybody.
Right.
So I love that. And I will say my journey, the last, let's just call it 2 years. So 2024, living in crazy chronic stress. And then when I went into 2025, it hitting me really hard how much time I lost with Riley and dedicating 2025 to completely re-regulating my nervous system, which I am very proud of myself that I've done an incredible job of just slowing down, reprioritizing what actually matters, still being able to work and perform at a high level, but doing it in a sustainable way because I was plugging those drains, what was draining my energy with the right things,
Right.
which was a breath work practice, which was nervous system regulation strategies. And a couple things that I noticed that kind of deals with what we're talking about is I check in with my breath, and I am proud to say that I constantly am nostril breathing. I feel more relaxed. I am able to recognize when I get triggered. So when we're living in a state of just like constantly
Right.
being triggered, we don't notice the like peaks and valleys as much, I feel like.
Right.
Where when I re-regulated, I could feel myself physically like getting upset or something. So I would be like, okay, I need to go re-regulate. But the other thing that I noticed is I used to be the number one like road rage driver. The amount of profanities that would come out of my mouth and the physical anger and like you can feel
Oh, yeah.
cortisol rushing through your body when someone was driving like 10 miles per hour under the speed limit. I remember us talking about this is like, what is the urgency, Jen? Like you're still going to get to the destination. We don't have to beat the GPS by 2 minutes like every single time. Like
Right.
they're still going to be there, whoever you're meeting, wherever you're going. Like, why are you inducing this state in your body?
Right.
So I do think of you all the time when I'm driving and I'm like, you know what? I would have been really, really pissed right now, but you know what? I'm just going to just enjoy the drive and maybe just listen to the music or just
Right.
relax.
And that's an amazing observation
Yeah.
because you didn't intentionally say, I'm going to work on my road rage.
Yeah.
It was just a byproduct of
Mhm.
regulating your nervous system.
Yep.
Right. And so that's amazing. And so I'm glad that you brought that up because breath work is a somatic practice.
Mm.
And what that is it's bringing you into your body. Our body is our number one communicator, and
Yeah.
we don't listen to it because we're too busy. And I like to say, when you can come into your body and you can start to trust your body and the communication that your body is doing, even though I don't like the word control, you are in more control of what's happening.
Absolutely.
And you do have the power. You're using your agency to make the decision to turn on the radio and enjoy that ride
Yep.
instead of getting upset over this guy who knows where he needs to be. And you're kind of like, oh, may peace be with you.
Yeah.
Let me give you my breathwork
Yeah.
instructor's number.
I should actually just put your number on like a piece of paper that I drive by and just like send it to them. Yeah, but you're exactly right. And what you're doing is shifting from, I'm going to use the word control just for this example. I can't control that
Right.
driver. It doesn't matter if I tailgate them or scream profanities. They're not going to go 1 more mile per hour
Right.
faster. And instead focus on like, okay, maybe I'll put a podcast on or like
Right.
just shifting it back to our control because at the end of the day, we are so focused on the million things that are out of our control
Right.
that elicit fight or flight states when really what matters, what actually impacts your longevity, your happiness, your future success, you are in control over.
Right.
And those are your thoughts and your habits. Finding the habits, the small shifts that can re-regulate you. And there's a lot of power in the mindset. We know that mind body is very connected and just refocusing on the things that we have agency over
Right.
and being intentional can have massive impacts.
Right. And I like to say that I've made the shift from high performance to high impact.
Ooh, I like that. So many shifts today in our conversation. I love it.
Because my work is better now because
Mhm.
I'm not multitasking, and I am able to say if I can or can't take something on.
Yep.
Like I'm able to say that without fear of retaliation,
Yep.
where before I would be described as a workhorse.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a workhorse.
Yeah. Well, we were so
anymore, right?
fearful that saying no meant
Right.
we would get fired. That
Right.
like just was wired into our brain. So recognizing your capacity
Right.
and then knowing if I said yes and I exceeded capacity, you wouldn't be able to show up or give the impact or effort that was needed for that project.
Right.
That's really impressive.
Yeah, so it's just all these little shifts and it's a byproduct of a regulated nervous system and feeling safe in your body, in your space and trusting it. It's
Yep.
just it's so wild what happens and how our intuition like just branches out
Yeah,
when we're in our body and we get out of our heads and we
absolutely.
start moving from that space of trust.
Yeah. There's so many shifts in this conversation that I think are so important, meaning mental shifts, but also the small shifts. Start with 5 minutes a day.
Mhm.
If you are enjoying it, you can move up. Now, I want to educate the listeners on where to find you.
Yeah, so I'm hybrid. So I can do virtual and I do in person. I do a lot of community events. You can find me at www.breathewithjoss.com. I have a community where my calendar is for events that I'm doing in person. We have the floating event.
She said floating event, which means you are not only doing an incredible, what is it, hour-long breath work,
Mhm.
and then you also have a sound
The
bath, but
sound.
you are floating in a pool.
Yeah, so you're not in the water, you're on a bed, it's very
Yeah,
relaxing,
clarify that.
yeah, we never do breath work or breath holds in the water, but yeah, it's 2 very powerful modalities. You've got your breath work and you've got the sound, and it's like a complete nervous system
Yeah.
reset, and people usually feel pretty good for a couple weeks after that event. But yeah, if you go to my website, you can find me. I have a breathwork community that you can join. And then we have the 30-day journey, which is just the 5 minutes. So if you feel like you can't commit a long time, like I never want anybody to feel like I'm adding something else. But 5 minutes is very easy to integrate. And I'm available to you to help you integrate
Yes.
that if you needed to get on a reflection call and say, this is what my day looks like. Where do I fit 5 minutes in?
Mm.
And we can talk about that and see where can you fit in those 5 minutes.
Yes. So
Yeah.
you have in-person
Mhm.
offerings for those who are in the Raleigh area, and then you offer two different programs for virtual. You have a 30-day program that's 5 minutes a day, and then you can move from there into the, is it called
21
21
day
Day
awakening.
Awakening, which is the progression we talked about. You start with 20, then you go to 40 a day, and then you go to an hour a day, which was awesome. I loved that experience. And again, benefit of working with Joss is that she educates you. You don't just throw someone into breath work because it can have reactions to it. So being able to educate them on like, hey, here's what breath work is. Here's what you may experience. It's okay. This is what's happening physiologically in your body. And then after the breath work, you also offer the opportunity, especially in the 21 Day Awakening, to debrief and to talk through and make people feel safe because we don't always know how to interpret what we're experiencing or what we're seeing. And I think you just do an incredible job of allowing people a space to process what they go through as well. So, a lot of options for the listener to continue working with you.
Yeah. I do one-on-one as well.
Yep.
So I have something called a prescription. So if there's a
Say that again because that name is amazing and you created it. So,
breathscription,
yeah.
you have a very specific goal that you want to attain or a very specific problem that you want to look at. And so we create a program or a protocol rather to address that problem. So one of the participants or one of my clients rather had fibromyalgia, was dealing with a lot of pain. And so we were able to reduce that chronic pain using breathwork protocols and just minor shifts, lifestyle shifts. And then I had another client who had social anxiety. She couldn't go into a store and actually enjoy shopping. And we worked in a hybrid setting. So we worked virtually. And then she FaceTimed me from the store. And she was in the store for 15 minutes, which was like huge. And she
Yeah.
was actually shopping, not just running in to get what she needed and coming out and having a panic attack in her car.
Because
So,
she had a regulated nervous system.
mhm.
Wow, that's super powerful.
Yeah, and she had different needs than my fibromyalgia client
Yep.
or my blood pressure client, right? Everyone has different needs. And so I do like to look at this on an individual standpoint. Even our group events, you're having an individual journey. And I just don't think there's like a one size fits all.
Which takes us full circle because one of the first things we talked about was creating that space for understanding what is the outcome that you're trying to look for, and then creating this breath scription to help guide people to get to that outcome and know that the outcome can change too. So I just love that your continued approach is just so personalized and customed to what each person is navigating, but also they can receive what they need to in the moment because that also changes. So I think that's incredible. I know we have a lot more to cover. So we are going to do a part 2 because you have incredible stories of what people have told you in your sessions that I think are just really powerful. We're going to talk more about parenting and how to teach these skills to children and capacity, because a lot of us are living past capacity, is really talking to that high performer who doesn't have time to the high performer who just can't add one more thing, but they know they need to, but they can't. That's who we're also going to be talking to in phase 2.
Okay.
And we're going to do our monitors so we can show in real time.
And we'll teach them how to relax without losing the edge.
Yes. I am so grateful that you are here. I had such a good time chatting with you, and I'm just so excited for part 2.
Thank you.
Yay! All right, and that's a wrap. Woo! All right. Oh my gosh, that was so fun. I'm so sweaty. How are you feeling?
That was fun.
Let me see that I'm wearing slippers in the video. Whee! Take your time.
I like the direction that went.